I think it's pretty interesting when I talk to writers, they talk about their skills and sharpening their skills and what kind of skills they need to be a better writer. And it is true that there are some skills that are crucial for writers to have if they want to succeed in a writing career. But I think that there is a really odd difference between perception and reality, because there are the skills that writers think they need and those they actually need, or the talents that writers think are a must to be a great writer, and those that don't actually really matter that much, because there is this whole thing of learning all the time. As a writing coach, I tell my clients that one of the beautiful parts about being a writer and having a writing career is that you are constantly learning. And that is what keeps our brains elastic, and it keeps us young and vibrant and awesome. So let's talk about those skills that you think you need, those you actually need, and the good news and bad news about those skills, why some of these skills you might think you have and you don't, and why it's actually easier to gain some of these skills than you might think. And also, we'll talk about some little hacks to just sharpen up those crucial writing skills as you go along. And also, when I talk about growing and learning, you probably want to have some kind of proof as to the fact that you're actually growing and learning, right? Sometimes we're like, I've been at this forever and I've not improved. Well, I'll talk to you about how to figure out whether you've improved and how. Buckle up, because this is going to be a really useful episode of the How to Be an Author podcast. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karena Akhavein, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. Hello and welcome to the How to Be an Author podcast. I am your host, writing coach Karena Akhavein, PhD, and I may have a PhD in literature, but I like to keep things really simple when it comes to how you can succeed as a writer. Now, keeping things simple does not mean you are not writing a sophisticated, kick-ass book that is going to wow your perfect reader. On the contrary, I like to keep things simple so that you can focus on things like imagination and world building and coming up with a great marketing campaign to touch that reader. But these things might be easier than you think. So let's talk about some of these skills that writers think they really need. First of all, writers are like, oh gosh, I really need flawless grammar. I need to have a huge vocabulary and, super sophisticated language, those giant words that people have to look up. And I need to be so creative. I need to be inspired all the time. Now, let me tell you, flawless grammar, there's a thing called Grammarly out there. It's not too bad. And you also have things called beta readers and editors. And more than just your grammar, it's a lot more important to get an amazing story across. When it comes to vocabulary, sometimes if you're trying to find words that are too complex or too esoteric, you're going to be alienating your perfect reader. I often say aim for maybe a 9th or 10th grade level in writing. That's plenty high. Believe me, remember all the vocabulary you learned in the 10th grade for the SATs? That's a lot. So you don't need to be writing things at a PhD level, because you will turn off a reader who might really enjoy your story. Now, I'm not saying to dumb it down, but I'm saying that just because you don't win at the crossword puzzle every day doesn't mean you can't be a good writer. And when it comes to inspiration, these creative geniuses, they're not necessarily being productive. I think that a consistent effort based on a good creativity, but something where you're actually taking that creativity and putting it into a work that's actually out there and that's on paper and that's going to be readable, that's so much more important than being a creative genius. Some of the actual skills that I think are more important that writers tend to downplay, one of them is resilience. And many of you hate to hear about resilience because it kind of infers that you're going to get rejected. But guess what? You're going to get rejected. You're going to have setbacks. And it is crucial to be resilient for long-term success. And resilience doesn't just mean taking it. It means taking it and going on. That's way harder than just being resilient. It also takes discipline, and discipline's not sexy. I get it. But regular writing habits and going and going and going, this outweighs those sporadic, romantified kind of Is romanticified even a word? I don't know. But anyway, it is so much better than those all-night writing binges that you see in the movies or that you think that these creative geniuses have. Also, having a creative vision, that's really nice. Being your own artist and all of that, sure, that's cool. But being adaptable, being open to feedback, changing, being willing to learn and to explore new genres, that might actually get you a little bit more successful in the long run. And also, there's this whole vision that the writer is a creative genius who's isolated in their writer's cabin. But you know what? Actually, building connections within the writing community, that can really help you to find more support and opportunities. And it's a skill. You might be an introvert, but you can absolutely learn how to network and how to build connection and how to really use those connections. I'm not saying to be a user, but I'm saying really some of these connections can give you things that you never thought they would. And also, one of the main things that trips up my writers is that they're like, I'm an artist. I don't know about marketing. I don't need to. I'm going to have somebody publishing my books. I am so sorry to tell you this, my friend, but a understanding of marketing is crucial. You need to know how to market your work, even if you get the best publisher on earth. But you need to understand that marketing a little bit. And some of you are like, but I'm not tech savvy. I don't like social media. Well, there are some negotiables and there are some non-negotiables, but know that when you're making a absolute decision when it comes to not learning a specific skill or not engaging in something that you know actually yields results, blame yourself when you don't sell as many books as you want. So here are some of the skills that I really think you do need. You do need really strong narrative skills because you might have a great story in your mind. So many writers tell me this. Oh, the whole story is right up here in my head. I'm going to get it out in seconds. You know what? The bad news is it's actually pretty hard to come up with a plot that is not either predictable or disjointed. So many authors have this idea in their head, so fully realized that when they actually write it down, they think their plot is airtight, and it's not. The good news is improving is way easier than you think. If you are using my outlining tools, if you're looking at my story architect in my course from idea to publish in 6 months, if you are showing me your beat sheet from Save the Cat, all of those things are really going to help you to create well-structured stories. And you can keep practicing outlining your own, even using lightning fast tools like the story spine. If you don't know what that is, definitely go back and check my course or check my podcast all about the story spine and the Save the Cat beat sheet, all of that good stuff, how to build a strong plot. It's really, really important. And finally, your beta readers are going to be so instrumental in telling you, hey, I didn't actually see where the story was going, or the plot lost me at one point, or, this is kind of cliche. All of that's really important to know. This is where your resilience comes in, where you learn from it and you move on rather than just falling down crying. Now, another big skill, again, more than grammar or vocabulary or massive creativity, it's character development. So you might think your characters are super memorable, and oftentimes in your head, they really are. Or maybe they are too much like you. So you're like, oh, they're super cool, but they're too perfect and they're lacking depth or consistency. And you're kind of writing them on a surface level because you know what they're like and they are awesome. But you're not really expressing that fully in your book without info dumping. And I really salute your effort not to info dump. That's great. But you really do need to deepen your characters. The good news is it's easy to do this by exploring backstories and motivations. And doing this just a little bit, you'll notice how much more your readers are connecting. So remember that character development is one of those really crucial things. Most people that I talk to say that they really connect with a book when they can actually identify with the character. When they fall in love with the character or the character is super interesting, that's where you've got your reader. Another skill that writers, I would say that this is one where more of you know that you need this skill, but some of you just try to bypass it completely. And I'm talking about dialogue writing. And I've devoted a lot of podcasts, quite a few blog posts, and a huge section in my course. All of this is devoted to dialogue writing, because the bad news is you might feel that your dialogue's great and it might still be stilted or unrealistic or over the top or stiff. And the good news is there are really some easy ways to learn how to write dialogue. Start by listening to the podcast episode about it, but just even talking to an editor or a writing coach about how to improve your dialogue skills. It's almost like a formula. And that's not to say that I want you to write boring dialogue, but even by listening to real conversations or watching movies or TV shows, you're very quickly going to be able to determine what the difference is between a great dialogue and a bad one. Now, when it comes to imagination, we were talking about that creativity, about having kind of a good baseline level that you actually apply. Too many of us, when we put too much importance on our imagination and our creativity, we seem to give ourselves a hall pass. We think that our ideas are so original, but actually many times they're kind of cliches in disguise. So the good news is that creativity doesn't have to come only from within. I think that by exploring diverse genres, watching movies, going to a museum, traveling, taking yourself on a creative date, having interesting experiences, and learning to look at those things with a creative writer's eye that is discerning and that's trying to distill that stuff into fresh ideas, you can definitely be honing those imaginative creativity skills. Now, when it comes to the resilience, talent or skill that I said you should have, I know that handling rejection feels overwhelming. It feels like you're inviting negativity into your life. But you know what? Just keep looking forward. Building resilience is actually a manageable skill. If you focus on learning from the feedback, and if you view rejection as opportunities for growth, and if you congratulate yourself and celebrate yourself for moving forward every time you've gotten some kind of feedback that feels like rejection, I think that it's going to feel better and better. And that resilience stops feeling like martyrdom and it starts to feel like growth. So that's really important. Now, when it comes to the discipline of writing, you might feel like that is so horrible. It gives you FOMO because you're missing out on all the fun things you could be doing. You're tying up all your great Netflix watching time and, you're doing this writing thing and the consistency feels not very creative and not very free. And so you end up procrastinating, which leads to guilt. I've made some videos and podcasts, and I've talked about this in my course, where guilt is really not a great motivator. So if you're trying to discipline yourself with pure self-loathing and guilt, yeah, that's not going to work out for you too well. But the good news is that even a small daily word count, or even just moving forward in one small way, even if that's posting on social media about your book or about what inspires you, these things build upon themselves and you end up being so much more disciplined than you thought. You end up finding minutes where you can actually do something major. Right before I did this podcast, I actually ended up reformatting a bunch of sections of one of my works in progress. And it took me 5 minutes. But you know what? Sometimes when you've got this huge amount of work to do and it feels unmanageable, when you tackle a little bit at a time, like that 5-minute rule, or you set a timer for 20 minutes and you address it, you feel so much better afterwards that it's that much easier to discipline yourself in the future. Now, when it comes to networking, this is another thing that many introvert writers really feel themselves battling. You might feel isolated. You might think that these connections aren't necessary. You might think, no, a real writer is behind their computer the whole day. The good news is, listen, networking is smaller and simpler than it seems. Even engaging on social media, right? One of your favorite book commenters or, one of your favorite book talkers. If you just engage, if you go, wow, I loved this post, I'm so inspired. That's the beginning of networking. That's the beginning of creating relationships. And if you have consistency in that, that's amazing. You don't necessarily need to attend a huge workshop and have this high pressure thing, but you can, maybe little by little, you can build up to it and you can see what's right for you, right? It's just like marketing where, you feel like you're always selling yourself and pushing yourself and it feels super self-centered and it's really daunting and you don't have the skills. But the good news is marketing can actually feel rewarding when you make it feel like connection. When you're providing value and communicating with your ideal readers, it feels so much better. It doesn't feel salesy. It feels like, hey, I'm sharing and I'm part of the conversation. And that's where you can really flip the switch. If you want to listen to a podcast that's actually going to really inspire you when it comes to the marketing thing and the sales thing, listen to my podcast about how owning a brick and mortar store actually really transformed my writing career. Because you're going to see how you can look at sales and marketing a whole different way and look at the skills that you need to learn in a whole different way. It's not a waste of time. This is something that you'll build on. And also, I really feel that for those of you who are rejecting all kinds of technology, you're rejecting the apps, you're rejecting the social media, you're rejecting anything that you perceive as trendy, believe me that keeping up to date with these things is so much preferable than finding yourself lost and left behind. So keep in mind that adaptability is so important, right? Clinging to familiar things is dangerous, right? If you reject that clinging to that one thing, you're really going to revitalize your writing and your whole life. So think about that. And it is really easier than you think. And I do have a bunch of hacks coming up on easy peasy ways to really improve your writing and your writing skills and the skills that help your writing career as a whole. And I really think that this is one of the mindsets that's most crucial. If you only take this away today from this podcast episode, I want you to understand and believe that simply focusing on the writing technical skills is not going to get you where you want to go if you want a writing career where people are reading your books. You absolutely need to also have those mindset skills. You need to have those productivity skills, and you need to have the business and marketing skills. It is crucial. And finally, one of the big skills that I think you need is patience. And this is probably the hardest pill to swallow for people like me. I'm very impatient. I'm very ADHD. I'm jumping around from thing to thing. And when I don't succeed right away, it is so easy to want to quit and tell myself, oh yeah, I failed. Or to say, oh, this work is good enough. Let's rush it and let's query now. I'm impatient. Or let's pull the trigger and publish. No. Cultivating patience is important. Now, somebody objective like a writing coach is going to tell you whether you are cultivating patience or whether you're just procrastinating. But there is that balance, and there is kind of that magic level of good versus good enough versus not good enough versus too overworked. So think about this whole writing thing as a long, long marathon, not just a sprint. You need to be patient, because if you look back a few years from now, and that is both a long time from now and not so long, you can really see what a huge difference you've made in your writing career and where you are in life just by being patient, resilient, and hardworking. So I think that should be really inspiring to you. I am here to tell you that you can absolutely do it. Now, let me talk about some things that you can do to improve those writing skills that are so easy. They're like little hacks. They're so easy that they feel like cheating. And this is another important message in today's podcast. It's that if something makes writing and the process of publishing and selling your books so easy that it feels like you're cheating, don't think that you're cheating, unless, of course, you're having ChatGPT write your whole book. But if something makes it easier, that's not cheating. That is an awesome hack that is going to help you to get further. So I want you to stop guilting yourself when you found something easy that you're like, wow, this feels like I don't know, found some kind of weird solution that's definitely not allowed. Yes, it is allowed. So the first thing that I tell people to do to improve as a writer, and this is something that you do anyway, but I want you to do it a little bit differently. I want you to read widely, and I want you to look at TV shows and movies. Yes, absolutely. You can still indulge in your Netflix habit, but the difference is I want you to do it actively. So I want you to read and watch widely and actively. So not only do I want you to read within your genre or watch your favorite type of show, like whether that's Keeping Up with the Kardashians or something that's a thriller or whatever, but I want you to diversify your reading as well and your watching. And I want you to analyze things as you read and as you watch. And this is not going to suck the joy out of it, I promise. Analyze things like styles, structures, and techniques. This is going to broaden your perspective, and this is going to inform your own writing. It's really funny. The other day, I was in my book club. I have a new book club I'm in. I'm kind of excited about it because, moving around a lot, you don't always get to have a book club. And I hope this one really sticks because these ladies are really smart. And one of the women in the book club, we've got a couple writers in our book club and then a couple non-writers who are really good readers. And we were talking about one of the books, and this woman observed, she said, it's so fun to have two writers in this book club because all of a sudden, I'm hearing a completely different perspective. You guys are saying, well, what I would have done is, or what I think they could have done was, and that's pretty hilarious that she noticed that. And it kind of made me notice that that's what I do when I'm reading a book now without even realizing it. I think to myself, how would I write this story? And that's such a great way of building skills. And of course, you have to be careful not to then go and write that story, obviously, but it's such a good way to become much more kind of knowledgeable about all the different ways of telling a story. Another really fun thing you can do to spark your creativity is use writing prompts. And you might be thinking, well, this is work. This is not a hack. So many people use writing prompts almost as a game. You can do this as a party game with your friends, right? You can do really lightning rounds of writing prompts. You can do fun games like you can do Cards Against Humanity, or you can do other games like that where you can even use those as a writing prompt. So these quick prompts spark creativity and they help you to practice different genres or styles or storylines with absolutely minimal effort, plus maybe a little bit of socializing. Imagine that. So this is a really fun thing to do. I think that playing board games or card games, especially the ones with prompts, those are a really great way of spending your time. Another thing I love to do is to play Clue and make it all the more sophisticated while you're playing Clue and add all this character development. Clue is a great game with all these really memorable characters and great settings. So look at it that way. Start to be a lot more observant of opportunities for storytelling in your life. Another thing I'd mentioned already, but this is such a hack. It feels like cheating. Set a timer. If you do things in short-timed bursts, believe me when I say this is a way of absolutely supercharging your productivity. And you don't need to do the Pomodoro technique where you set the timer for 20 minutes and then do a 5-minute break and start up again. You can absolutely set that timer for 5 minutes or 2 minutes. I've done this with some of my very seriously ADHD clients. And believe me, the amount of stuff you can get done in 5 minutes, but also the scary speed with which 20 minutes can go by, that is the power of the timer. So definitely check that out because I think that's so great. And then in terms of saving time, and I've talked about this a million times before, but doing the whole dictation thing when you're writing your book, this actually helps you to hone your storytelling skills because you kind of have to distill things, and it also helps with your dialogue. It also helps with being more productive. It also helps with using technology. So definitely doing the dictation and transcription. This is something that is honing your skills on so many different levels. I think it's really, really great. So think about doing that. And as I was saying, technology, apps and tools might feel like they are having a really steep learning curve and like they are super rigid and they don't work for you. And I talked about Grammarly. I've talked about other tools on other podcast episodes, things like Scrivener, or I use something called Descript. Another client of mine uses Otter AI. And all of these apps and tools, they may or may not be right for you. So I've discussed in one of my episodes how Scrivener for me does not work. I really like to use either Google Docs or even just good old Word. That works really well for me. And I have ways of using it by doing formatting and things like that I have learned over time. So you can make apps, tools, and whatever works work for you. You can create your own workflow, and that's going to take some trial and error, but it's also going to take some learning. But I think that once you've mastered these things, you can apply it to so many other realms in your life that you are now no longer the person who's left behind by technology, but somebody who actually has real world skills, so that if you need to promote yourself, if you need to create a newsletter for, your parent teacher association, if you need to format something for your kid, you can do that because you've been doing it for yourself. And I think that's kind of awesome. Now, when it comes to the mindset hacks, positive affirmations. This is so funny. One of my friends was telling me, please, can you do this? I want you to put on your bathroom mirror something saying, you are kicking ass. You're almost there. Keep going. And for a minute, I really, really had the reaction of being like, that's so lame. I'm not going to do it. And then I said, you know what? She's absolutely right. Practice positive affirmations, even looking at a sign on your bathroom mirror every day. That is just the easiest way of actually boosting your mindset. There is scientific proof that this helps. And just why not, right? How much effort does it take to make that sign? Almost none. Do it, do it. It's this tiny, tiny little thing that is so manageable that is really going to help. And the other thing I wanted to talk about these tiny atomic habits, right? 5 minutes of writing, celebrating a tiny win, being super happy when you've sent one query letter or you've written one scene, being happy when you've posted and connected with a single person online or, talked to a single writer. All of that's really, really great. Atomic tiny habits absolutely build up. And this feels like a hack because doing one thing for 5 seconds, it couldn't be easier. It actually does have a measurable difference over time. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to the little hacks to improve your business skills, basic marketing, you can take a little mini class in a single afternoon. You can do all of the marketing parts that are in my course. This is why my course is a 3-pronged thing. It's not just about writing skills. It's about mindset and business as well, because I want you to have these small bite-sized morsels of instruction so that you barely feel that you're learning it, but then you turn around and you go, wow, I've learned so much and I'm actually doing it. I'm actually marketing my book. I'm actually building my author platform and I didn't even notice I was doing it. That's major. One other little tiny hack that I think you could do is I think that learn to be organized. And this pains me. Believe me, this pains me to be organized. I am not an organized person by nature, but I've had to learn to be because that's what it takes to succeed in your writing career. So if you keep telling me that you've lost your chapter or you've accidentally deleted something or you lost an email about this writing course or you don't know how to download, your program so that you can log on to office hours with me. I mean, all of these things, this is setting you back. So just learning these little tiny things over time, those things are really going to help. I want you to be organized. And that includes when you're querying, track your darn submissions. Now, you can use a spreadsheet. You can use a subscription submission manager. You can use a simple list in your notes program. But keeping track of things reduces stress and gives you a feeling of more control. And I think that this being organized is literally a skill that you can learn. If I can do it, you can absolutely do it for sure. And if you don't know how to do it, and if you're still stuck, I've got this great idea. Talk to a writing coach because we can very quickly target and pinpoint those tiny things that are going to lead to you getting the skills that you need to really exponentially grow in your writing career. Now, when you've done all of these things, you might be thinking, thanks a lot, writing coach, but I've done all these things and I don't feel that there's a huge effect. I don't feel that I've actually improved that much. And this is the crazy thing about human nature. As we improve, as we grow, as we learn, we get used to the new normal so fast that we feel like we never changed. We feel like we're still where we were when we started. So I want you to check where you were before. I want you to see how you improve when you're adopting these skills. And there are a few really easy ways of doing that. Number one, revisit old work. I know how tempting it is to chuck your old work and throw it away because it's embarrassing and it's really bad. Well, hello, the fact that you think that's really bad, that means you've grown, doesn't it? It means that you have improved in some way. And not only do I want you to celebrate that you have grown and improved, but I want you to look at your old work and identify what exactly was so bad about it. Identify those specific things that you've learned and celebrate those things because that's amazing. Now, regularly ask for constructive criticism and feedback from trusted peers if you can. If you're part of a writing group, it's amazing to have someone in your writing group say, you know what? wow, you've grown so much. This piece that you've been working on since last year, it's unrecognizable. It's improved so much and changed so much. Believe those people when they tell you you've improved, because that is so true. Another thing to do is that if you've been querying agents for a while, and again, resilience, I want you to query agents for a while. It's a reality that most writers, you're going to be querying for a while. You're going to be querying with different books. You're going to be querying maybe for years on end. Keep track of those metrics. Look at those rejections and see as it starts to turn into requests for a full manuscript, or seeing how it turns from just a flat form rejection to a little suggestion of like, hey, work on this and maybe I'd like to take a look at your next book. That is progress. Agents don't need to give you any kind of feedback at all. They can just ignore your book if they want to. So when they're telling you, hey, there's something here, but right now it's not right for me, that's actually progress. Track that and accept that you're making progress. And then look at your goals. See how your goals have been changing over time. I think that's really amazing, because when you're growing and changing and learning, your goals become more and more audacious. And they might not feel that way, because all of a sudden, like, your goal might have been to finish a book, and now you've finished a book and you've published a book, and now your goal is, to sell X number of copies, or your goal is to branch out into a new genre, or whatever that might be. Do you see how much bigger your goals are getting? And you need to celebrate that as well. So I hope this helped you to see that there's so many different skills and different ways of growing as a writer, and different things that you need to succeed. And you can absolutely achieve and do all of them, and it's easier than you think. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and stuck, please feel free to reach out to me as your writing coach. You can have a free 15-minute call by logging on my website, or you can sign up for my course before it goes way up, because I'm soon going to be changing that course so that I can do a little bit more hand-holding, a little bit more one-on-one with that course, actually a whole lot of it. I'm redoing my whole system so that I can help just a handful of writers, because my writing career is growing hugely, exponentially, and I need to devote a lot of time and energy to my writing as well. So I want to keep serving you in all the ways I can. You'll still have access to workbooks and things like that. But if you do want a course with me and the chance to work with me one-on-one, that is going to be changing. We all change, and we have to embrace that. Thank you so much for joining me on the How to Be an Author podcast, and I look forward to being with you next time. And if you have any questions ever, please send me an email, and I'd be glad to devote a whole podcast episode to your question in the future. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.